Thank you very much, first of all, for introducing me to give a talk on the part of the new scientific endeavor on the new oral antivirals for mild to moderate COVID-19. And thank you for arranging such an hybrid, I would say, the CME, and that is presenting in the huge enthusiasm. It's great to see our honorable panelists here as well as also online. It is my pleasure actually to see Professor Amin Choudhury sir. He is my direct teacher. He is here on board, and also the Professor H.M. Islam sir. He is the director of the CDC, and also Professor Shahid Jamal sir is honorable and respectable professor of the Shahid Sohrawardi Medical College. Also, it's a delight to say that on online we have Professor M.A. Faiz, my direct teacher, also Professor M.A. Titumia sir, and Professor M.A. Hassan Choudhury, and Professor Khalil Rahman from their respective medical college to part of the panelists. I will be really delighted after the talk what our panelists like to say on this part of new oral antivirals. The audience in the offline as well as online, I like to say after a long time I came in front of you so that we can have a real scientific discussion. First of all, I would say that I don't have any financial interest in the part of the drugs with the Eskayef or any other pharmaceuticals company. I don't have any relations with the Merck as well as the Pfizer. So don't worry with any financial issue, but I'd like to give a very thank you for such a wonderful avenue that he has created by the Eskayef to make a presentation very lucid and available to all. So today's talk will be actually on the new oral antivirals for mild to moderate COVID-19. That is to be concerned. We all know there are two drugs actually available. So I will be trying to focusing on these two, but mainly only one drug. That's the combinations of the oral antiviral for mild to moderate COVID-19. We all know that for the last few years we have been observing SARS-CoV-2 as a viral infection, and we know many things actually, but still it's a new virus and the virus is still evolving. As you can see, many of the variants are coming and going. So whatever we say that the scientific avenue from the virus up to the knowledge of 2022, that we are expecting these things can be happen in the SARS-CoV-2 infection by means of progression as well as others. But things will be also in future to look after what the virus is going to show again. As we all know that there are pre-symptomatic phases of the virus where the virus get an entry in our body. And interestingly, since then, there is a duration of say around 7 to 10 days when the virus remains in our body as a viremia and the viral genome remains the higher peak. And since then, there may be many evolutions from the infection to the human body and leads to the different clinical manifestation. As you know that there will be features from the asymptomatic phase, then the symptomatic phase will be extending mild to moderate to severe to critical illness. This is how the phases has been described in many of the literature that we have observed by SARS-CoV-2. Now remind on this part that there will be no prediction when some of the mild to moderate case will lead to the severe and critical illness. There are many risk factors which has been observed, especially on the part of age, like the comorbidities like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, many of the immunosuppressive condition. I'm not going to give the names, but these are the few things that has been observed and said that they could lead to the severity and critical illness. But it is still unpredictable whom and where the hospitalization rate will be more. There has been observations in the last 2 years that when the hospitalization does happen, there will be a pictures of shortness of breath and dyspnea observed in many of the viral pneumonic phases. Interestingly, those having a severe illness can develop ARDS, which will be obviously a very critical issue. And these are the groups of the people used to see in the ICU admission, having a serious critical disease by our physicians all around the globe and treated. And many of them can have a comeback, but unfortunately, there will be a group of people who will die. So I'm not going to say many things about the epidemiology or any other pathophysiological context of SARS-CoV-2 because this is a therapeutic issue. So I'll be starting with the WHO recommendation initially, because in the 14th January, WHO in 2022 gives a therapeutics and COVID-19 living guideline recommendation. You see, they have selected the intervention and make it the study population where the patient with confirmed COVID-19 was observed in 3 groups. One group is non-severe, that is our interest of topic today, mild to moderate case. Then there will be severe case, and last of all the critical case. On the right side of the screen, you can see the severe and critical. We will not say anything about these 2 groups, but we will only consideration on the non-severe. And you can see the WHO says that when we are seeing a patient having mild to moderate illness, it is actually the absence of signs of severe and critical disease. So what is severe illness? The severe illness indicate that when somebody has an hypoxia and the oxygen saturation less than 90. If you have a sign of pneumonia, it may be clinical or radiological, whatever it is, and if there is a severe sign of respiratory distress. So you can see when you do not have any severe sign, then you can say it's a mild to moderate illness. Now, what is the recommendation of therapeutics? You see, the WHO does not give any recommendations in favor when we are considering about the non-severe or mild to moderate illness. Why? Because WHO need to have accumulating all kind of data, not only the one piecemeal of studies of any high pharmaceuticals company, others. They need a huge amount of data, and then there will be recommendation. The process is going on in the WHO, and hopefully in the future time they will have a recommendation what should be the mild to moderate, strong recommendation in favor. Interestingly, there is a conditional recommendation in the mild to moderate illness by means of WHO to use the casirivimab and imdevimab, and also the sotrovimab. Mind it, this recommendation was there when the Omicron is actually taking paces, not in the peak. And when the WHO has given the recommendation, they were not considering the Omicron as a feature. Later on, their statement was that among these two drugs, sotrovimab is a drug which can be recommended universally for any kind of variant of the SARS-CoV-2, but not the casirivimab and imdevimab. WHO has also recommended this combination of drug, a monoclonal antibody, in the severe critical illnesses as well when the Delta was in the upsurge. Interesting, WHO has given serious recommendation against few of the drugs. Among them, one of them is that in non-severe or mild to moderate illness, do not use corticosteroids. So this is an absolutely brilliant idea. I would say that this is against using it for the mild to moderate illness. Our physicians and all our people should know that corticosteroids should not be used in non-severe illness. Secondly, there are a few other drugs that has been in the pipeline like the ruxolitinib and tofacitinib, and WHO is saying that the best drug for severe or critical illness, if you want to reduce the immunosuppressive or the immunity or the hyperimmune response, then we can use either IL-6 receptor blocker, tocilizumab, or the baricitinib. If somebody does not have any access to this drug, then you can use the ruxolitinib or tofacitinib. WHO is also saying that there is a conditional recommendation against use the Remdesivir because there has not been high quality of evidence for the Remdesivir, WHO has, according to them. But this is a big question because many of the authorities and many of the countries in their guideline uses the Remdesivir in different grades of the illness in the COVID-19. WHO also said there is a conditional recommendation against the use of ivermectin, which can be only used in the context of clinical trial rather than giving. But there was a strong recommendation against use the convalescence plasma in mild to moderate illness in COVID-19. So there has been huge use of the convalescence plasma in our country and also the globe. So this is a strong recommendation. Do not use the convalescence plasma in any mild to moderate illness. Do not use the hydroxychloroquine and lopinavir/ritonavir in any patients of any degree of severity in COVID-19. So this is in short about the WHO recommendation. But remember, COVID-19 is streaming high, Omicron comes up and it takes up stall all over the globe. So there will be always many of the approved treatment for the COVID-19 by different authorities.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Many of the countries in many of the guidelines. So let's see what would the approval treatment that has been established in the COVID-19. My impression is that the first one will be oxygen, because this is the hypoxia that leads to the big problem of the people, and the people are dying due to the hypoxia. So this is the number one treatment, the oxygen. And it has been recommended to give the graded oxygen therapy in hospital setting for the severe to critical illness. So you can see, do not use the oxygen even for the mild to moderate illness. It be recommended only for severe to critical. Steroids, like the oral and IV dexamethasone, it should be preferably given in the hospital setting and also recommended for severe to critical illness. So steroids should not be used in non-hypoxic patient. The patient who does not have any less oxygen saturation hypoxia should not be receiving any steroid. So people who are having treatment in their home should not receive steroid. So this is second issue. Third is anticoagulant, which we know that is in two form, either subcutaneous IV infusion. that should be provided in hospital setting. Again, I'm saying this will be recommended for hospital setting, and we can use it for the moderate to severe to critical illness. Now, regarding the medicine, there has been approval for the giving Remdesivir in many of the authorities, which is available in injectable IV infusion. Preferably, it should be given in the hospital setting because it's an IV infusion form, and you can also select to give it a moderate to severe illness. And remember, the critical illness does not actually need any Remdesivir. That means if somebody is having a prolonged duration in the ICU setting, there's no role for this one. There is obviously huge recommendation came up for the tocilizumab, which is also an injectable IV infusion. Obviously, it should be given in the hospital setting for reduction of the dysregulated immune responses, and chooses indication is a severe to critical illness. And about the monoclonal antibody, which is the Regeneron COV, binaclizumab and Remdesivir, injectable and is also IV infusion, has to be given in the hospital setting, but this is the one drug that can be chosen to give in the mild to moderate illness. But remember, many of the people of them actually are not hospitalized. So if there is an IV infusion clinic, any outdoor clinic, that will be a suitable area because this is always an injection. But very recently, there are a few oral drugs came up which will be very much helpful for any physician or as well as many patients who is having mild to moderate illness at their home. So there are two oral anti-COVID medicine that has been authorized by the US FDA and UK MHR. Number one is Molnupiravir. It has been already launched a few months back in Bangladesh. And there is a new drug which is known as the Ninmatrelweer, co-packaged with ritonavir. This is also popularly known as the Pfizer's PAXOVIR. So my impression is that I will be giving more highlight on the part of Ninmatrelweer co-packaged with ritonavir. This is also popularly known as the Ninmatrelweer, which is also augmented by ritonavir. So the talk will be concentrated on how does it actually works, and who is it for, and what is the evidence. This is the science that I will be giving interest for all of you. So what is PAXOVIR actually? They say this is the Ninmatrelweer tablets which is co-packaged with ritonavir tablet. And you know that Ninmatrelweer is a SARS-CoV-2 main protease inhibitors, which I will be coming up just a bit later. And ritonavir is an HIV protease inhibitors and CYP3A inhibitor. This is a metabolism that we are concentrating. Ninmatrelweer is actually available in immediate release form. There are film-coated tablet as well as many other tablets. This 8 tablets actually consist of 150 milligram of Ninmatrelweer. What about the ritonavir? Well, ritonavir is available in a film-coated tablet, and each tablet actually consists of 100 milligram of ritonavir. You can see the chemical chemistry below the slides. I'm not going to say anything about the chemical issues or the biochemical because it will make things complicated, but this is available online if anyone wants to know the chemical structure of it. But the big issue, how does it work? I'm giving you a pen picture actually, how the virus actually do their replication in our cell so that we can easily say how the PAXOVIR and Molnupiravir usually works. We all know something about the SARS-CoV-2, it has a spike protein. And by the science, we know that in the spike protein, there is a specific domain known as the receptor binding domain. What I like to mention that in this receptor binding domain, there are two things. One is called the pre-fusion protein, another is called the post-fusion protein. Means that when it is combined with the ACE2 receptors, it has to have changes in their structure to lead to post-confusion or post-fusion protein, which is very crucial for any replication of the virus in our body. But importantly, when the spike protein get an entry through the ACE2 receptor in our cell and get the entry of viral messenger RNA, our own ribosome, cell's own ribosome came up and immediately made some of the protein. This is very important because these are the large protein known as the polyprotein. This polyprotein that you're actually seeing, the larger version of the protein here, is very crucial for the replication of the viruses. Why? Because this big protein need to be cleaved at different location to get a smaller protein. If the smaller protein is produced, they can combine and then make another protein known as the replicase, or which is also known as the RNA dependent polymerase, through which the virus will replicate. So you can see this long protein need to be break down or trim to make a small protein, and this will be done by means of protease. This main protease is also produced from the messenger RNA of virus. and also it is by means of our own ribosome. So you can see virus is actually uses our own machineries and snatch it and make their own protein for their replication. This is wonderful. And this is very important. Why? Because this product of PAXOVIR or the Ninmatrelweer works over the main protease. It inhibits there. So if it inhibits, the long large protein will not be trimmed. And if it is not trimmed, there is no option that you can have the replicase. So virus replication will be stopped. So this is the wonderful, beautiful science that has been created by our scientists, and say the products will be doing early. If we can give an early, it will inhibit the replication of the virus, because when the replicase enzyme is already developed, it then works on the part of messenger RNA to develop many of the RNA strands. And when the many of the RNA strands happen, it can transcribe and also translate to different structural, non-structural as well as accessory protein, which is essential for assembly, packaging, and then develop a new virus. You can see on the right side of the lower portion, a new virus already developed, and it can be excluded from the cell. So billions and trillions of virus can develop when you have given the chances of virus replication. So that is the why Ninmatrelweer is a super drug, because it early inhibites the process of replication. Once the replication started in the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, then the Molnupiravir can work. It can cause serious mutations, and there will be a serious amount of error catastrophe happen, which will inhibit the replication as well as developing different messenger RNA from the viral. So it will work a little bit later. So I will say that if you consider about the virus entry and their exclusion from the cell, the most earlier part that we can package it is the protease inhibitor, and this is where the Ninmatrelweer works. But what is the problem? Problem is that Ninmatrelweer can be easily metabolized by a P450 CY3 system. See, if that system remains in the body, it will be easily break down, so that the effect will be reduced. So that is why ritonavir has been packaged. Ritonavir does not have any direct effect on the part of SARS-CoV protease inhibitors. It can inhibit the HIV protease inhibitors, but here what will happen? It will inhibit the P450 CYP3 enzyme. If that enzyme becomes inhibited, the metabolism of Ninmatrelweer will be prolonged, and so that it can work more and more, and so that it can affect more and more for virus clearance. That is why they make a co-package, Ninmatrelweer with ritonavir. This combination will not only work for the Ninmatrelweer for long, also inhibit the metabolism of different drugs. But always make a confusion that when somebody is having a problem with a P450 CYP3 enzyme, there will be many other drugs from the outside which will also metabolize by this process. So when somebody is giving the ritonavir in a drug, be careful of those drugs who is actually having many of the metabolism by the same enzyme. So you can see it's a peptidemimetic inhibitors of the SARS-CoV-2 main protease inhibitors, and it has a different protease which acts through this Ninmatrelweer. And it is also make it capable of processing the polyprotein precursor I have shown you, so that prevents the virus replication. Interestingly, it has been found that when the recombinations of the PRO in the biochemical assay has been observed, it has been shown that huge effect by means of IC50 value and others. Interestingly, when the X-ray crystallography happens, it shows that at a particular location site, when the protease inhibitor is working for cleavage, the Ninmatrelweer acts over there. So you can see this is a very selective drug, where the 11th site where the protein breakdown happened, it works at 11 sites. So that is the reason why it becomes a revolutionary thing about the science developing in the oral medicine working so quickly. I told you about something about the ritonavir. So you can see this is the HIV-1 protease inhibitor, but not active against the SARS-CoV-2 main protease inhibitors. It inhibits the CYP3 mediated metabolism of Ninmatrelweer, so that the plasma concentration of the Ninmatrelweer goes up. Now let's come to the part of the human studies that we have concerned. There are 3 clinical studies initially done by the Pfizer's PAXOVIR. One is called the EPIC-HR, means that evaluation of protease inhibitors in COVID-19 study. HR means high risk patient. So they selected 2,246 patients of COVID-19, and in that study against the placebo, it has been found that 89% reductions of the COVID-19 related hospitalization or death happened. So that's a wonderful observation when the EPIC-HR study report came up. So you can see on the graph when the PAXOVIR, or the naming of the PAXOVIR in the Eskayef, I would say that given against the placebo, the difference is huge. It causes hospitalization only 0.7, while it is 6.5. I will be given a few of the data a few slide later so that you can understand why I am giving so much importance on this part. The study also shows that there has been serious risk reduction in around 94% when the age group is more than 65. So that is big issue because it's an important individual risk factor of severity and critical illness. So any patient who is having more than 65, you will be even more interested to give those drugs because the reduction rate of efficacy becomes more and more. Another issue is that we want to know whether it directly reduces the virus load or not. Now in that EPIC study or HR, it has been shown that the PAXOVIR reduces the viral load approximately tenfold. So it's around 0.93 log per ml relative to the placebo, which means that there will be very strongest virus load reduction by means of any oral IV drug for the COVID-19. There's a second study which has been taken up by the Pfizer was the EPIC-SR, means that evaluation of protease inhibition of COVID-19 in standard risk patient. Means that we people here, having somebody hypertension but control, having diabetes mellitus but control, this kind of people are said standard risk patient. Now in that study, the secondary endpoint also shows there is a 70% reduction in the hospitalizations. So you can see that 2 out of 3 will not go to the hospital if we can provide it as early as possible. And interestingly, there was no death. And when the virus load has been observed, again it is shown that tenfold reduction of the viral load happened pretty quickly in the phase 2-3 EPIC-HR study. So this is the phase 2-3 trial that we are saying about the oral protease inhibitor. Important point is that who are the patients they have selected? So they have selected actually the higher risk outpatient whose oxygen saturation was more than 92%, and interestingly those people who are unvaccinated. The selection criteria of less than 5 days of symptom onset, and the drug has been given in the package of 300 milligram of Ninmatrelweer and 100 milligram of ritonavir. So this is the combination that has been given in the PAXOVIR phase 2-3 trial. So you can see I told you about the combination. So when you are thinking about the combination, you have to take 2 tablets of 150 mg Ninmatrelweer and also 1 tablet of ritonavir. So there will be total of 3 tablets in one pack. In this one pack, you do 3 tablets morning and 3 tablets at night, and so that you can take it for the 5 days duration. This is how the dosage schedule should be given to the people. And this is the same practice has been taken in the PAXOVIR 2 and 3 trial. Now, interestingly, the PAXOVIR 2 and 3 trial is consisting initially planned for 3,000 subjects in 5 continents of the globe, not only in the United States of America. This is a big news, and you can see the selection criteria. SARS-CoV-2 confirmed positive, mild moderate symptom less than 5 days, no hospitalization, more than 12 years of age, weight should be 40 kg or 88 pounds, and at least one risk factor that I was telling about. I will be given the pen picture of the trial so that you can easily understand why this is so much important. You see, the criteria of the N was 3,000, they planned it for it, but when the subject came up 1,219, the study was stopped. Why? Because the data safety monitoring committee said the benefit was such that if somebody want to continue the study, it will be unethical. Because the placebo groups, they need to be given recommendation immediately for this drug. That is the reason why the study was stopped. Now about the results, let's check. There are few of the groups who take less than 3 days of the drug, and there are few of the groups who take less than 5 days of the duration of the drug. I mean the duration of illness. And among them, on the left side you can see the PAXOVIR, on the right side you see placebo. The hospitalization was only 3 out of 389. So it arounds 0.8% hospitalization there. On the right side you can see placebo. At the same time, on the 385 patient, 27 get hospitalized. Means that 7% people needed to the hospitalization. Look at the death. When it is given within the 3 days duration of time, there was a 0 death. Among the 389, in the placebo, there is a 7 death happened, which is 1.8%. So the relative risk means that relative to the placebo was 89% reduction for hospitalization. But my impression is, look at this one, the percentage, 0.8% and 7%. When you just calculate 7 minus 0.8, it will came up 6.2%. This is called absolute risk reduction. Means that whether a drug absolutely reduces how much, and when the 6.2% you are considering absolute risk reduction, all you need to is make it 100 divided by 6.2. This will give us a calculation of number needed to treatment. So number needed to treatment for the less than 3 days is 17, means that we need to give 17 people treatment for the mild to moderate category of COVID-19 in home to reduce 1 hospitalization. That is wonderful for a drug, and given orally, very cheap, as easily suitably given. And about the death, when you are considering, the same thing happens, 1.8% death happens for the absolute risk reduction, which indicate that 56 patients need to be treated with the PAXOVIR or the combination drug to reduce 1 death in this. Now you may say that 56 is a large number, but I would say when there's a millions of people are suffering from the mild or moderate illness, a 56 number is a huge number of importance if you're considering death as an outcome. Even for the less than 5 days duration, you can see there's a 85% reductions of the relative reductions, and there's a 5.7% absolute risk reduction, means that you need to treat 18 people to give a 1 people not to get admitted in the hospital. So number needed to treatment becomes 18, and number needed to treatment for the death becomes 63. And that is the reason why it has become so early of recommendation, and the start was stopped immediately so that it can be recommended for all. About the safety and availability, I can show you this very important. Adverse event was 19% in PAXOVIR group, but 21% in the placebo group. So serious adverse event was 1.7%, and look at this, 6.6% in the placebo group. Now I will be saying that very carefully, see these things, because people are not receiving the drug. Many of the people of them will be serious. Means that these people may not have any drug related serious event, rather they have a serious illness and lead to hospitalization. So the discontinuation of the drug was less in the PAXOVIR because the people are getting better, while it is more in the placebo group because many of the people are going to the ICU. So that's the reason why they may have to go to the discontinuation of the drugs. About few things about the availability, you see this is a one company started by means of the Pfizer. I will be saying that Eskayef and many other pharmaceuticals company of Bangladesh came up. Thank you very much for coming up, because we need a serious demand if you consider globally. United States think that 120 million people in 2022 needed these drugs for the globe, and they have purchased 10 million drugs for their own country. And for the 10 million drugs, they need to have 5.3 billion drugs, cash money for the United States of America. Huge amount of money that is needed for to cover the United States of America. So the cost is very important issue. Whether any country needs to be considered about the costing is very important. Now, how about the authorization? So as because the FDA immediately authorized, it came to say that the Patricia Cavagiani, she is the director of the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, she says that it's a new tool to combat the COVID-19 in a very crucial time when the new variants are emerging and promises to make antiviral treatment more accessible. I will say that this is very important to know about the variants, because you see the variants of concern is concentrate on the part of spike protein. But here the oral drugs are concentrating on the protease inhibitors as well as replicase enzyme. So variant of concern will not be a concern for oral drug. This is a very good news. We all know Dr. Eric Topol, a wonderful personality of Executive Vice President. He's a big physician for a globe. And he says that beside the vaccine, one of the revolutionary scientific change was the oral drug. And he was saying that this Ninmatrelweer plus ritonavir may be a good, as because that gives a 90% reduction of hospitalization death. And there was no big issue of safety. So that's the reason why he was very much enthusiastic on the part. And obviously, the Pfizer CEO give this highly effective against the Omicron was a big news for him. So immediately international media came up And not only the part, the BMG as well as other authorities came up that Health Canada, Health Singapore, they immediately approved the Pfizer Covid-19 antiviral treatment, and the UK regulator immediately goes for the antiviral approval. Pfizer becomes hailed as a game changer. There are many saying about this thing of the drug. And also it says that how antivirals provide hope for the vulnerable Covid-19 patient. So that's wonderful. So you can see the recommendation when provided by the FDA, as I said, that you can use this combination of drug in mild to moderate Covid-19 in adult as well as in pediatric patient more than 12 years of age, more than 40 kg, with a positive result of direct SARS-CoV-2 testing, and who are at high risk of progression to severe Covid-19, inclusion of the hospitalization death. I told you about the dosage. It is 300 mg Ninmatrelweer, means 150 mg 2 tablet, with 100 mg Ritonavir, 3 tablets taken together orally twice daily for 5 days, and can also be taken with or without food. No problem with that. The treatment course duration is 5 days, and it should be initiated as soon as possible. I told you less than 3 days duration was even found better than the less than 5 duration of the treatment, but treatment duration should be always 5 days. Another important that if somebody is taking the PAXOVIR combination drug and then he developed the severity illness so that he can go to the hospital, the recommendation is to continue and course completion of the 5 days duration of the PAXOVIR. Now about the patients with renal impairment. You see, this is important because in severe renal impairment, when the GFR is less than 30 ml per minute, there is a not recommended to be given this combination drug, because you can see in the list chart, when the severe renal impairment happens, the maximum, the area under coverage, the concentration becomes so much that it could lead to the toxicity. So that's the reason why for the mild renal to moderate renal impairment, it can be provided. For the moderate impairment, the duration of the drug, the Ninmatrelweer will be only 1 tablet, means 150 mg, with Ritonavir twice daily should be given in that case for 5 days. For the hepatic impairment, for the child part class C, it is not recommended because it can cause a severe hepatic impairment at the same time. For other child part class A or B, it can be provided with no dose adjustment at all. Now, serious issue about the contraindication. I would say that there are many drug-drug interactions that need to be considered, and physicians all over who are prescribing this drug must know something about these drugs. Number one thing, if anybody has any hypersensitivity to any of the component of the drug of Ninmatrelweer or Ritonavir, should not use this drug, number one. Second thing, there are many other drugs I told you who is be metabolized by P450 CYP3 enzyme. So if that drug remains in the body, and if you provide this combination drug, there could be a chance that those drugs will not be effective, or there may be a chance of toxicity of those drugs. So somebody having an alpha-1 adrenal receptor antagonist in the name of alfuzosin, analgesic in the form of pethidine, piroxicam, the anti-anginal drug, the ranolazine, the antiarrhythmic drug, especially the amiodarone, dronedarone, propofol and quinidine and flecainide, should not be used when we are providing the PAXOVIR. We should not use the colchicine when we are prescribing this drug. Lurasidone, pimozidol, clozapine, this should be stopped if somebody is providing. And also the ergot derivatives. We are frequently using the HMG co-inhibitors like the simvastatin, lovastatin, other groups of drug. Sildenafil for pulmonary hypertension as well as the impotency, and also the triazolam oral midazolam drug. Now remember, these are highly dependent on the CYP3A for clearance, and for which the elevated concentration of those drugs are become a serious life-threatening condition. So if somebody is receiving these drugs, should be stopped for a duration of 5 to 7 days if somebody is providing the PAXOVIR. Second thing, there are many other drugs which itself causes the CYP3 inducer, so that Ninmatrelweer effect will be reduced. So if somebody take an anti-cancer drug or anticonvulsant drug like carbamazepine that are many people used to take, phenobarbital, phenytoin, or rifampicin, these drug induces this enzyme so that Ninmatrelweer effect will be reduced. So if somebody having taken these drugs also need to be stopped for a duration of 5 to 7 days so that the Ninmatrelweer and Ritonavir can act. An important issue is that many of the herbal products also has been shown to have serious effect if we give this combination of drug. So the drug-drug interaction is very important. Any physician who is going to prescribe this know these drugs, and also people who are taking this drug should tell their physicians what are the drugs they are taking. These are the pharmacokinetics. I'm not going to say a lot of things about those things, but important issue is that when your combinations of ritonavir happen, it actually shows the human plasma bonding protein is less, so the drug can really act very well. The renal elimination, other thing has been shown up there. So it's a wonderful combination of drug, I would say, to have a good pharmacokinetic property. There's no available human data on pregnancy. The study was not done there. So preferably it should not be given to the pregnant lady. But remember, the high-risk pregnancy group who have a mild to moderate illness have every chance that they can go to the severity. And there has been many of the ample data on ritonavir of safety in the pregnancy. Only thing is the Ninmatrelweer. By its unique mechanism of action, if any of the physicians think that this is a high-risk pregnancy can lead to severity, they can prescribe this drug by giving the benefit and risk ratio. If the benefit is more, the recommendation is to use this drug. Pediatric, there is no recommendation to give it less than 12 years or 40 because there is no data available. There are limitations, not authorized for the initiation of treatment who require hospitalization. It is not recommended for any severe or critical COVID-19. We must think this is very important because in hospital setting there are other protocols and other guidelines. We also have our national guidelines, so need to be followed that one. We should not use it for the severe to critical illness. There has been one study happens for the PAXOVIR for the post-exposure prophylaxis. This is not data available yet, so we cannot recommend it for the pre and post-exposure prophylaxis right now. And we should not use it for more than 5 consecutive days because there's a less of data. Now, the Remdesivir, this is another antiviral that why I mentioned this is not an oral drug, but I'm mentioning it because I'm telling something about the mild to moderate illness. You can see there's a one study of 3 days Remdesivir in outpatient or infusion clinic where 279 patients was given intravenous Remdesivir for 3 days and 283 patients received the placebo. And when the outcome was seen about the hospitalization, they found that only 2 patients of the Remdesivir goes to the hospital, while 15 patients of the placebo goes to the hospital. Again, I am saying 0.7% and 5.3, and if you deduce that one, you can have 4.6. So the number needed to treatment for the Remdesivir will be 25. Means that 25 people of mild to moderate need to be treated with the IV drug of Remdesivir to reduce one hospitalization. So you can see the relative risk reduction is 87%, but when you consider of NNT, it becomes 25, but the PAXOVIR it becomes 17. So Remdesivir was also recommended by many authorities to use it for the mild moderate illness, and that is the reason why FDA Center says that a 3-day course of the Remdesivir within 7 days of symptom onset in mild to COVID-19 cases resulted in relative risk of 87% lower risk of hospitalization death than placebo, which is a good drug. So which means that we have many of the 2 oral antiviral drug and 1 IV antiviral drug for mild to moderate illness. So you can right now have a lot of options, and this all 3 will be X against the Omicron variant. So this is a comparison you can see against the Molnupiravir, which I am not going to particular talk today, against the PAXOVIR and the monoclonal antibody. You see the number needed to treatment for the monoclonal antibody is also closely around 18, like that of the PAXOVIR. But this is important that monoclonal antibody will not act against the Omicron variant except the sotrovimab. So the combination will not act. This is one. And second thing, this is the IV drug has to be given to infusion in an hospital setting. So there is a serious amount of Omicron impact on choosing oral antiviral drug in the mild to moderate illness. This is the comparison that we are saying that population to avoid for the Molnupiravir is the pregnancy and breastfeeding, and women who is trying to conceive. You cannot provide the Molnupiravir because the Molnupiravir has been said that there is a chance of toxicity in the reproductive system, and there is a chance of mutation can develop in human host cell. So that is the reason why there was a selection. It has been given to be as a 4th line of drug, not a 1st line of drug. And the effectiveness of Molnupiravir was found to have 30%. So that is the result. It's a good drug, but it should be reserved only when you cannot provide the combinations of oral viral, when we cannot provide the Sotromoviv, which is a wonderful number needed to treat, and when we are not providing Remdesivir. So this is the comparison between the 3 drugs. You can see less than 5 days duration, we need to think about Molnupiravir and Ninmatrelweer. There is no study of Molnupiravir below 18 years. Ninmatrelweer has a good that it has studied from the 12 years above. And the Remdesivir you can provide within the 7 days of illness. It is also being provided for 12 years and above. And the 3 days of IV infusion is recommendation. The dosage has been given for the Molnupiravir 4 plus 0 plus 4 for 5 days. For the Ninmatrelweer, it's a 3 plus 0 plus 3 for 5 days. Can take with or without food. For the kidney patient, you do not have to adjustment for Molnupiravir. For severe renal impairment, hepatic impairment, we cannot provide the PAXOVIR or the Ninmatrelweer group. The regulatory authorization, both of them has UK MHRA and FDA approval. Remdesivir is the only FDA approval. The effectiveness obviously far better than the combination rather than other Remdesivir and Molnupiravir. This is the Sotromavi paper that has been published in New England Journal of Medicine, which also shows that highly effective, around 70 to 85% relative risk reduction, and number needed to treatment was even 12 for the Sotrovimab. But interestingly, this is also IV drug to be provided, and also safety profile is quite good. So that is the reason why NIH started the panel recommendation for mild to moderate illness to choose the listed drugs in order of preference. The first preference was the Ritonavir boosted Ninmatrelweer. The second choice would be Sotrovimab. The third choice will be Remdesivir, and the fourth will be Molnupiravir. And they say that when you do not have Ritonavir boosted Ninmatrelweer, or you cannot give it by means of contraindication or serious drug-drug interaction, then think, can you provide them Sotrovimab or not? If you don't have any Sotrovimab, think, can you provide them with injection Remdesivir for 3 days or not? If all the 3 days cannot be given for any reason, then you think to give Molnupiravir. That is the recommendation from NIH, and very recently by our Honorable Director Nazmul Islam sir has taken an initiative for our national guideline to introduce these drugs, and the authority also given the similar kind of recommendation for our country, and hopefully it will be very soon available to our physician. So I'm just going to be end pretty soon. Sorry for taking a lot of time. The key message is number needed to treatment for PAXLOVID is only 17 to 18, and the drug is need to be given safely because there is a drug-drug interaction. PAXLOVID or the combination need to be used too early, preferably less than 3 days. Of course, it has to be less than 5 days from a symptom onset before someone is deemed ill because it doesn't work that appropriately at that time. More than 12 years of age with at least one risk factor with mild to moderate illness at home is the ideal candidate. Lack of study that is evaluating the role of PAXLOVID in breakthrough infection following vaccination. There will be studies coming up. Further studies need to be done to establish interference with available vaccine, works against different kind of variants, which is good news due to the unique mechanism of action. Cost effectiveness and accessibility for all is a major issue that needs to be dealt with the effect of PAXLOVID with other therapy of COVID-19 need to be examined. That's all. I'm stopping out there. I hope few questions may be arising for our panelists so that I can listen very carefully. Thank you very much for giving me the time.